Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the online service of Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, a loving, spirited, and inclusive congregation. While our physical sanctuary is located in Port Townsend, Washington, the sanctuary of our values and principles are found in the hearts and minds of curious and creative people located throughout the region, the country, and the world. In this time of global pandemic and civil unrest, in this time when quote-unquote leaders tell us up is down and that facts have alternatives, the practices and values of Unitarian Universalism need to be actualized into tangible realities throughout the world. Let's begin this morning with a deep breath, aware of that delicious feeling of fresh air filling lungs. Breathing, especially clean air, is essential to physical, spiritual, and community health. Breathing, especially clean air, is essential when we are marching in the streets and demanding justice. We need to breathe freely, to shout, to speak, and to sing. As poet Hayden Carruth writes, let justice be primary when we sing. Breathing, especially clean, free air, is essential for life. And when we hear anyone gasp the words, "I can't breathe," it is our duty to open up the airways so lungs can fill. I can't breathe. Take in your next breath consciously and realize how deeply precious this free, clean air is. This breath, quite literally, is you. Nobody has the right to take that away from you. Now, the justice that the world is seeking right now is inside you. Use your precious breath to speak justice, to shout justice, to sing justice.
Bertram will now lead us in the call to community.
Please join me in singing our call to community, filled with loving kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well, may I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well, may you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. loving kindness. May we be well, may we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well, may we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, a creedless religion that strives to be radically inclusive, deeply loving, and fiercely just. And as we light the chalice this Sunday morning, our hearts are breaking once again, and our anger is aroused once again by the killing of unarmed black people. As we light the chalice this morning, let us bring to our hearts and minds the very first principle of Unitarian Universalism, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Every person. Our responsibility as Unitarian Universalists is to make this founding and grounding principle manifest in the world by helping create the conditions where every person can flourish within their one wild and precious life. And as we do that necessary and challenging work in this world, let us recall the words of Anna Swear, a brilliant Polish poet who served as a nurse during the Warsaw Uprising in World War II, a poet and a nurse fighting fascism, captured by Nazis, and waiting for her execution. Thankfully, she was not executed. Thankfully, she gifted the world this poem entitled, "There is a Light in Me." There is a light in me, by Anna Swear. Whether in daytime or in nighttime, I always carry inside a light. In the midst of noise and turmoil, I carry silence. Always, I carry light and silence. The opening words this morning, a single sentence from one of the world's great religious leaders, a religious leader who has witnessed and survived extinction-level brutality from political forces for decades. If you do anything this Sunday morning, please take this quote from the Dalai Lama and find room for it in your heart. My true religion is kindness. The opening song this morning, Gather the Spirit. Bertram.
Please join me in singing our opening song, Gather the Spirit. The power, our separate lives will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seed for the growing are laid in the store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in strength, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in power, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in strength, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
Hey everyone. I wanted to take this time to talk about the important things that are happening in our country right now and open up a conversation in case you haven't been talking with your friends or family about the killing of George Floyd this week at the hands of police and our history of segregation and white supremacy and police brutality. These are conversations that are really hard to have and really important that we do have. We have to understand how our country was formed to understand how to dismantle those systems of oppression. So this is a story that I wanted to share about two children grappling with the result of police brutality against a Black person. This is called Something Happened in Our Town. Something bad happened in our town. The news was on the TV, the radio, and the internet. The grown-ups didn't think the kids knew about it, but the kids in Mrs. Garcia's class had heard the older kids talking about it, and they had questions. After school, Emma asked her mother, "Why did the police shoot that man?" "It was a mistake," her mother said. "I feel sad for the man and his family." "Yes, the police thought that he had a gun," said her father. "It wasn't a mistake," said her sister. "The cops shot him because he was Black." Emma was confused. "He is brown, not Black," said Emma. "Some Black people have dark brown skin and some have light brown skin," said her father. Black usually means African American in the US, and typically some or many of their ancestors were brought here from Africa as slaves. "I know what a slave is," said Emma. "That's when you have to do whatever the other person says." "Yes." Slaves had to do whatever white people told them to do. And even after slavery ended, white people didn't let Black people live where they wanted to live, go to school with white people, or vote. Who are white people? White people came here from places in Europe or Russia or other countries. We are white, even though our skin looks light tan. "Did our family do those bad things?" asked Emma. "Yes," answered her mother. "Back then, many white people thought that they were better than Black people, even though it wasn't true." Liz added, "Some people still think that most Black men and boys are dangerous, even though they're not." Was the man that got shot dangerous? Asked Emma. No, her mother said. Shooting him was a mistake. But it was a mistake that is part of a pattern. Like the pattern of my blanket? Emma asked. Yes, but this pattern is being nice to white people and mean to black people. It is an unfair pattern. Suppose you had a birthday party, invited everyone in your class except for the black kids, her mother said. How would that make the black kids feel? They would be sad, Emma said, or mad. And you would be missing out because you never know who's going to be your best friend, said Liz. And you can help others be fair, said her mother. Like telling Anna to stop teasing Ling about her name? Asked Emma. And her mother gave her a hug and said yes, just like that. In another house, Josh asked his mother, "Can police go to jail?" Yes, said his mother. Why do you ask? That white policeman who shot the black man, said Josh. Will he go to jail? What he did was wrong, said his mother. But he won't go to jail, said his father. Why not? Asked Josh. Cops stick up for each other, said Josh's brother Malcolm, and they don't like black men. Josh was confused. Why not? Some police are black. You're right, said her mother. Uncle James is a police officer, and so is my friend in Kenya. There are many cops, black and white, who make good choices. But his father said, but we can't always count on them to do what is right. Malcolm added, I could get stopped by the police just because I'm black, even if I don't do anything wrong. That's not fair, Josh said. What if it was a white man in the car? Would the police have shot him? They probably wouldn't even have stopped his car, said his father. Sometimes white people are treated better than black people, said his mother. But it's not right. People should all be treated fairly. Josh's mother gave him a hug. We are proud of who we are. Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King Jr., and Nelson Mandela were strong and brave black leaders. They showed us that we can stand up for our rights and set good examples for others. They were treated unfairly, but helped others to learn to be more fair. Some people haven't learned yet, said his father angrily. Why are you mad? Asked Josh. I'm mad that we are still treated poorly sometimes. But I can use my anger to make things better, said his father. Black people have a lot of power if we work together to make changes. I have power, Josh said, and I'm smart. His father smiled. You're right. His mother added, and you can change people's hearts by sticking up for someone who isn't treated fairly. Just like how Malcolm sticks up for me when the kids tease me about my glasses, Josh asked. He tells them to step off. Just like that, his parents said. The next day, a new kid joined Emma and Josh's class. His name was Omad, and he was from a country far away. Omad didn't know where to sit or what to do because it was his first day in school. He talked a little bit, but it was hard to understand him. He said that he was just learning English. After lunch, the class went outside to play soccer. Daniel and Sophia picked kids to be on their teams. All of the kids were picked to be on a team except for Omad. Daniel said Omad probably didn't even know how to play because he was new. Sophia said Omad might not be good at soccer. Josh remembered what his mother said about sticking up for people who were treated unfairly. Emma remembered what her mother said about unfair patterns and birthday parties. All of a sudden, Omad was not alone. Emma and Josh were leading him to their team. "We have enough kids on our team," Daniel said. "We don't need him." But Josh was ready. "Step off," he said. "He's playing." "Yeah," said Emma. "We don't want to miss out." And just like that, Emma and Josh gained a new friend and started a better pattern in their school. We all have the ability to educate ourselves about our history and about the present state of our country. And we all have the ability to make things more fair in our own circles. Stick up for one another, speak truth to power, and be kind.
We have the privilege today of welcoming 7 new members into our fellowship. Let me introduce them to you. Our first person is Frances Andrews. Frances has lived in Port Townsend for 20 years. She's been involved in QUF for some time now and has enjoyed the sense of community that she feels here, including our annual Thanksgiving dinner potluck. She looks forward to more participation as a member of QUF, and we are so glad she has taken this step. Welcome, Frances. The next 2 people are married together. They are Bruce and Ida Domozlicki. They grew up in Illinois, completed graduate degrees at the University of Wyoming, and then taught in Nebraska, Illinois, and Missouri. Ida retired in 2008 after teaching a wide variety of students, including preschool, emotionally disturbed, homebound, and hearing impaired people. And Bruce retired in 2013 as a professor of economics and director of the Center for Economic and Business Research at Southeast Missouri State University. Ida and Bruce moved to Sequim in January of last year after many trips to visit their son, Eric, and daughter-in-law, Heather, in Tacoma. They make frequent trips to their daughter, Rebecca, her husband, Shanna, and their 3 grandchildren in the Missouri Ozarks. Both Bruce and Ida love traveling. Ida has visited 10 countries, and Bruce has been to most of the 50 U.S. states. You'll want to note that Bruce is also a shortwave ham radio operator and an avid reader of history. And Ida is a bird watcher, gardener, and amateur naturalist. They love playing with QUF's folk music group, Bruce on the marimbula, and Ida on the hammered dulcimer. They will celebrate their 50th anniversary this month, and with as much partying as allowed. Welcome, Bruce and Ida. Next, we have Angie Graziano. She relocated to Port Townsend from Annapolis, Maryland, with her wife, Jessie, and youngest daughter, Lauren, in September of last year. This is her first time living on the West Coast, and she is enjoying fishing, hiking, snowshoeing, and walking in the Olympic Peninsula. In her professional capacity, she is a retired Fish and Wildlife Service employee and is currently enjoying a second career as a principal director for a global technology consulting firm. Angie is excited about building community in Port Townsend and being a contributing member of QUF. She welcomes the chance to play guitar with the QUF Folk Ensemble. Welcome, Angie. Now next is Jessie Wild, who is married to Angie, who I just now introduced. Jessie is originally from the West Coast and is delighted to be back now and exploring her new home on the Olympic Peninsula. She is a retired Fish and Wildlife Service endangered species biologist and a sea kayaker, a still budding artist, and she looks forward to contributing her energy to several organizations in Port Townsend. Jessie enjoys traveling, painting, boating, reading, hiking with her dog Kobe, and outfitting her van as a camper, which seems to be a perpetual project. Welcome, Jesse. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Patricia Smith. Patricia moved to Port Townsend in 2007 with her husband, Jaap Romijen, after retiring from the state of California. Together, they have built a modern house in Uptown with great views of the Strait. Patricia loves to garden and has been a long-time hospice volunteer and is part of a bereavement team that facilitates grief support groups. Additionally, Patricia volunteers for the Alzheimer's Association and facilitates a caregiver support group in Port Hadlock. As part of a community effort, she also helps start and facilitate a memory cafe at Farino's in Port Hadlock. And if that wasn't enough, Patricia also sits on the Olympic Area Agency on Aging Advisory Committee. Welcome, Patricia. We are so happy to welcome these newest members. Our congregation, you'll recall, is not based on a common creed, but rather on a common covenant, which is a way of being together in a loving, supportive, and cooperative fashion. As such, our congregation will do our best to be a source of strength, compassion, and growth for you, Francis, Bruce, Ida, Raina, Angie, Jesse, and Patricia. And we ask that you too become a source of strength, compassion, and growth for others here. For it is in lifting each other up and working collectively that we make this a vibrant and life-changing community. We are so glad to receive you as our newest members.
Right on. It's always a great Sunday when new members join QUUF. I'm looking forward to meeting you and hanging out and talking deep topics. What we'd like to do now is acknowledge and welcome those of you who might be visiting us this morning. If you're watching this on our Facebook page or on YouTube, you're invited to say hello in the comments section and to tell us your name and where you're from. If you're having a hard time actually seeing the comments section, simply take your computer or your phone off of full screen mode and everything will become apparent. We'd love to hear from you. And we also hope that you'll join us for virtual coffee hour in our Zoom room, our fellowship Zoom room. If you don't have that link, it will be posted in the comments section at that time. And if you find this service inspirational or useful, hopefully both, please share a link with your friends and family. So welcome, everyone. We are very glad that you're here with us today. One of the things that Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship does is we strive to be a generous congregation. And to that end, 3 times a month, we share our plate offering with organizations in the community doing good work in the world that extend the values of Unitarian Universalism on the ground. Today, as is our tradition, on first Sundays, we do our Hope offering. HOPE is an acronym for Helping Our People Eat. Thus, all the money that we collect today will go to our local food bank. You can text your donation to the number that is on the screen. You are also very welcome to visit our website and press the donate button. And if neither of those electronic versions rock your socks, you can write a check and send it to Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Thanks. And our offertory music will be Regrets, Songs Without Words by Felix Mendelssohn, played by Helen Luritzen.
Thank you, Helen. That was so beautiful. It's now time to share the joys and sorrows of this congregation, but we always start by acknowledging that our joys and sorrows are just a fragment of the larger world's joys and sorrows. Today, we place a stone thinking in particular of the chaos that has erupted throughout our country this past week or so. And we place this stone with a prayer for safety, for the law enforcement and firefighting working so hard these days to protect people and property. Many of us have friends and family members who are among these first responders, including, but not limited to, member Mary Tucker, whose daughter is a police officer in Colorado, and member Shannon Kirchner-Holmes, who is married to a police officer here in town. Now, I've had enough conversations with first responders this week to know that they feel very worried and very vulnerable right now. And so, in placing this stone for them, we are hoping that they and the protesters that they are protecting remain safe and calm and grounded during these unprecedented times. And now we light a candle of sorrow for Brittany Tooney, who is the great niece of Joe and Steve Blair. Brittany suffered a tragic death in a murder-suicide in Kelso this past week, and it was done at the hands of the grandfather of her child. So we light a candle of sorrow in honor of Brittany. But then we're also going to light a candle of love and hope for her surviving daughter, Ava, who is only 7 years old. And of course, for the entire family, who is understandably sick with shock and grief right now. Let us hold them all in our thoughts and prayers. We light a candle of sorrow for the death of Rick Bain, who is the son of Lee Doza and stepson of Gunther Doza. Rick died unexpectedly on May 11th, the day after Mother's Day. Now, although he had struggled with cancer for some years, it was thought that Rick was in remission, so the cause of his death remains unknown. Now, those of you who know Lee and Gunther know that they have suffered far more loss than anyone should have to endure. So we hold them tightly in our hearts right now. It's a sad, sad time. Gunther and Lee, we are sending you our love. And on a brighter note, we light a candle of joy for the birth of Kristen and Otto Smith's second grandchild, Maximilian David Bosnick. Their daughter, Anna, and husband, Eli, welcomed little Max into their arms on Friday, May 29th in Bellevue, New Jersey. Now, some of you will remember that Anna attended this congregation with her family from age 5 and was an enthusiastic participant in YRUU conferences. And so, with that in mind, we marvel that she's now a mom, and we congratulate Anna, Eli, Kristen, and Otto. Welcome to the world, little Max. We have 3 wedding anniversaries to honor today. We light our first candle for Frank Layton and Jane Albee, who celebrated their 38th anniversary on May 29th. It is Frank, in fact, who's behind the camera right now. Happy anniversary. Our second candle is for Shauna and Jacob Talamonte, who celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary on May 30th. They are overjoyed with this milestone and have had a great time celebrating with their sweet kiddos, Phoenix and Osiris. And now we light a candle for Rob and Karen Wamstad. Having met in the 5th grade, Rob and Karen are now celebrating their 50th anniversary today. Happy anniversary, Karen and Rob. And now we light a candle for a very special congregant who turned 100 years old this week. Yes, I am speaking about Quentin Wald, whom our pastoral care team surprised with the Safe Surprise Party. Here are a few images that congregants sent in to honor this remarkable man. Happy birthday, Quentin. And now we place a final stone, holding in our hearts the joys and sorrows I've just shared, but also thinking of such joys and sorrows among us that are unexpressed but of no less importance. I invite you now into a moment of silence for prayer or meditation.
We lit the chalice this morning with a poem by Anna Sweer, which included the line, "In the middle of noise and turmoil, I carry silence." The reading this morning calls forth that same word, silence, to different effect. Here, a single sentence from the poet and activist Audre Lorde. "Your silence will not protect you."
Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh, hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh, my Lord, oh, my Lord, what shall I do? Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, it sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, it sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, my Lord, oh, my Lord, what shall I do? Oh, it sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, it sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, it sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, my Lord, oh, my Lord, what shall I do? Oh, my Lord, oh, my Lord, what shall I do? Oh, my Lord, oh, my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do?
When this service was originally scheduled a month ago, I planned to lighten things up within a global pandemic with a homily about the annual ritual of graduation, about the pride of achieving hard-won goals and the joy of robed scholars tossing their mortarboards spinning into the air. When this service was scheduled a month ago, the homily that I was going to deliver quoted a passage of poetry from Jim Harrison, who wrote, "Going in the bar last Saturday night, I noticed they were having high school graduation down the street, caps and gowns, June and Mayflowers fresh from the channel fluttering in the still warm air. After a few drinks, I felt jealous and wanted someone to say, 'Best of luck in your chosen field,' or 'The road of life is ahead of you.'" Now the poet at the bar is feeling jealous because of the fresh-faced graduates they're hearing over and over again, "The road of life is ahead of you." Now I have two nephews, and both happen to be graduating this June, one in Georgia, one in Washington, one graduating from high school, the other graduating from college. One nephew graduating in a state where yet another unarmed black man, a 25-year-old named Ahmaud Arbery, was killed by two white men who were not arrested for weeks. The other nephew, graduating in a state where the first known deaths from COVID-19 in the U.S. were located, the first national hotspot for a global pandemic. My nephews, they've never met each other, and yet they share a similar experience in the month of their graduation. The country that they are graduating into is, quite literally, under siege. Now, I met both of these young men when they were babies. I can't say that I know them very well. What I can say is that I am saddened and ashamed, and I'm deeply disappointed by the country that I have helped shape for them to enter. I, and we, are not doing a very good job. Name your crisis. Name your urgency. Name your injustice. Here's a quick 10 in no particular order. Global climate change, systemic racism, state-sanctioned violence, wealth inequality, housing insecurity, food insecurity, sexual violence, environmental racism, healthcare reform, LGBTQ persecution. If given the opportunity and a legal pad, I am certain that our congregation of engaged citizens could swiftly brainstorm hundreds of other urgent, burning issues to add to this list. Hundreds of issues. Let me start that secondary list right at the top with a black Sharpie. Uncontrolled, unregulated, and greed-drunk capitalism that chews up the bodies and spits out the bones. Now, there are plenty of reasons to be profoundly pissed, and the protests and the riots throughout the country and around the world indicate that there are millions of people who are profoundly pissed right now. And for good reason. They are taking to the streets in the midst of a global pandemic when health experts advise that we stay 6 feet away from each other. And here we are gathered in our virtual Unitarian Universalist sanctuary, a place where we come to find solace and sustenance and sense, to move forward into our communities, to take the next steps on our road of life, both individually and as a collective. And yet, we sit here, profoundly pissed off, stewing and stir-crazy in some version of the stay home, stay safe orders, trying to figure out what to do. To do what? To make things better. To make this world a better place than it currently is for huge swaths of humanity. To move the dial, as it were. Now, I want to believe, I need to believe that this religion that we're practicing, this creedless religion that leverages the brain and the heart and the hands as spiritual tools, is a force for good in the world. That Unitarian Universalism helps create and construct the world that we actually want to live in, to thrive in, to flourish in. This world. Not a future heavenly realm that requires a savior to get there. This world, this country, this place, the places we call home, the places and the people living in those places, pleading for our best selves to take care of them. Now, the world that is burning and rioting needs some kind of systemic exorcism and a radical reimagination. The way that I see it, the goal of this sublime, creedless religion is to bring out your best self in this complicated, complex world, because this world needs your best self. And when this religion shines within you, you inspire the world to bring out the world's best self. Now, Consider our first and founding principle, the one we called forth at the lighting of the chalice, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, as in every person. Now, I love that this principle does not say all people, a phrase which brings to mind a mass of humanity, but rather the principle is intentionally specific and sharp and focuses on every person. This principle sees the face of every person, sees the face and knows the name, and calls for us to recognize this person's worth and dignity, and this person, and this person, and this person. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. When I think about our first principle, I think about my favorite quote from the Dalai Lama, who said, "My true religion is kindness." My true religion is kindness. Now, some people I've talked to about that quote, they dismiss it as so much pink snowflake, unicorn, sparkle dust, and I respectfully disagree. To truly cultivate and being kind, as in your very being is kind, takes practice and work and consistency, and your kindness will be tried and strained and exercised when confronting this burning world, the world that's drenched with these vicious and pernicious problems. Now, I think kindness, practicing kindness, bringing kindness into the world, should be the fundamental activity of Unitarian Universalism, because kindness creates the conditions in which people show their worth and dignity. Their worth and dignity are able to shine. So I want to be shoulder to shoulder with the Dalai Lama, who has lived through some wretched situations born of imperial politics, and practice his true religion and make it my true religion, our true religion. And I mentioned kindness as a backdrop to a conversation that I had this past Sunday, a conversation that essentially rattled me to the core. I'm sure that you've had these conversations in the past 10 days. I had reason to be on a conference call with some young people, and we of course talked about the protests and the riots that have been flaring up around the country. Two of the folks on the call, both of whom grew up as UUs, each had attended a rally that day in separate major American cities. They spoke of how inspirational and powerful the experiences were. They were fired up. They were filled with energy and purpose to end racism, to create justice, to dismantle both the police state and the prison industrial complex, to replace them with systems much more humane, systems rooted in basic human decency, systems that focused on, as primary goals, proper housing, proper health care, good education, meaningful employment, essentially to create a society so healthy, a society so just, that police and prison become less and less relevant. Now, I grew up and I live in a society where police officers have always carried weapons that could unleash lethal force. They have the authority to do so, granted by the state. I live in a town where the local state park is patrolled by armed rangers in bulletproof vests. I live in a country where I could waltz into a gun shop and buy a military-grade machine gun and call this my God-given constitutional rights. Don't like my machine gun? Go read the Second Amendment, and then back up one and read the First. Our society is armed to the teeth. Our society, apparently, is inherently violent. And I remember in the late 1980s walking down Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley, California with an exchange student from Scotland. We came within eyeshot of an armed police officer walking his beat calmly. Now, my new Scottish friend, who's a brilliant young scholar who went on to work at the BBC as a radio journalist and a television director, said that he was affronted. He was appalled by a police officer, that police officer, being sanctioned by government to carry firearms so openly, as in that gun, because such a sight in Scotland was incredibly rare. It was eye-opening for me. So perhaps it is the case that an armed police officer strolling a city street in broad daylight should be a rare sight. I never considered that before. Maybe we should be disappointed with the situation because it is primary evidence that we are falling short as a society in creating living, vibrant communities with proper housing, proper health care, good education, and meaningful employment for every person. Now, the challenge, of course, is that trying to achieve each and all of these actual conditions for every person is dismissed by most holding political power as so much pink, snowflake, unicorn, sparkle dust. Now, that said, as a religious person, I think of Cornel West's pointed words. Never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. Never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. The justice of proper housing, proper health care, good education, meaningful employment for every person. My true religion is kindness. It's not an easy religion to actualize in this particular world. Now, in that teleconference that I was on, one young woman relayed that in the protest that she attended, violence broke out. As she was talking on the phone from the safety of her apartment, she could smell burning rubber from tires and see police helicopters hovering nearby. She did not know whether looting or riots were taking place. Riots, I said. Riots are not good for anything. Mobs, they're irrational by definition, and if and when their energy turns violent, people get indiscriminately hurt. And then there was this long pause. I don't know, she said. I think looting and riots make a huge statement, and that the people who need to hear may finally hear. If looting and riots work to change the system, a system that's built on the violent oppression of black and brown people, then I'm all for riots. Now, the voice uttering those sentences belonged to a Unitarian Universalist. We may have to respectfully disagree on this point, I said. I cannot abide by riots. And then, of course, the conversation led to the comparison between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, the historical and passionate embodiments of two distinct and conflicting tactics and worldviews during the civil rights movement: violence, nonviolence. Well, maybe Martin Luther King is held up as a shining example because the system wants everyone to behave, the woman said. Maybe Malcolm X was right. Again, the voice uttering those sentences belonging to a Unitarian Universalist. She was saying these words using breath made from air that was befouled with the smell of burning rubber. And I listened. The original intent of this homily was to approximate a graduation speech, to provide some inspiration, to celebrate accomplishments, to move forward into the world with a light heart and a focused mind. And rather, we smell burning tires. In this time, when so many people are calling for action, wondering what is effective, anguished about where our world is going, how to move forward with purpose and intention, let's close with our hands in the earth and a poem by W.S. Merwin entitled Place. We all live in a place called this place. And amidst all the fervent cries and calls for systemic change, let us also be mindful that it is our call to make our place, this place, healthier and more just through real-world actions, specifically nameable actions in the face of a burning world. Place by W.S. Merwin. On the last day of the world, I would want to plant a tree. What for? Not the fruit. The tree that bears the fruit is not the one that was planted. I want the tree that stands in the earth for the first time, with the sun already going down and the water touching its roots, in the earth full of the dead, and the clouds passing, one by one, over its leaves. Please, figure out what your tree is and plant it in your place today. The world needs your best self now more than ever. Amen.
Please join me in singing our closing song, Guide My Feet. We're going to sing this a cappella. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. Oh, guide my feet while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. Oh, hold my hand while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. Oh, stand by me while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race. Oh, search my heart while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain.
Now's the time to extinguish the chalice. Please join me with the words found on your screen at home. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And the benediction this morning, a beautiful little poem by Antonio Machado, Beyond Living and Dreaming. What matters most is waking up. We have come to the conclusion of our service. We invite you to our Zoom room fellowship hall for coffee and conversation. You can find a link in the comment section. And as we do so, please enjoy our postlude, which is entitled At a Certain Church by John Work, performed by Helen Luritzen.